Okay, so my next question is going to be based on the optics of the industry and of the world of martial arts. We have so many different optic people are exposed to. So one of them is like the MMA one, where we see these athletes go into the cage and they fight. Right, that's one. Two is you have the very traditional martial arts. The gis and the belts and things like that. And then you have more of a modern optics, which is like, well, they're not wearing really any uniforms, but they're doing something a lot. Their approach is just a lot more different. And I could go on and on. There's like a dozen different types of ways that martial arts looks to the population. So I guess my question for both of you would be, one, what have you guys seen change over the course of, we'll say, 20 years that has been both good and maybe not so good, and not so good in the way that it is keeping people from getting involved? And then what are some things that have changed that are helping people get involved? So, Duane?
Cool. Yeah. So one of the things that I've seen a huge shift over the last couple decades is the rise of MMA. Okay. We all know that.
Yeah.
It's been commercialized. You have the UFC, Bellator, all these giant organizations that are getting just tons of media exposure and creating superstars.
Right.
So with that rise, we're seeing a lot of the formerly very traditional schools starting to at least become open-minded to incorporate some of that MMA training, whether it's groundwork, takedowns, the sport of it itself, whatever that is for them, they're at least open-minded to it. So that's pretty cool. But the problem, though, that we also see, kind of the con to this, is when you have a very unqualified instructor or school owner who goes to some little weekend course.
That's right.
Learns a couple moves, and now they're a jiu-jitsu expert.
And the public is not even privy to this.
Yeah, so anybody that's listening to this right now, if you don't know the difference, you're still not really going to know.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. That's the concern that I have. And, we see this a lot, and it's just not acceptable. So I think that it's really important for people just to know that exists. It's a good thing to, in my opinion, to go train at a school that has options and different types of classes. That's fine. Even, if it's traditional, where it's like, all right, we're going to do traditional martial arts and weapons or whatever. But just make sure that you do some research on the instructors.
Right.
Like, find out their background. Who are they? Where they come from?
Right. Okay. Melody, got anything to bounce off that?
Well, optics-wise, what has improved? Access to better trainer. People like Extreme Youth Sports who've done the research on colors and design are able to provide that with their customers or their clients, their martial arts schools, so that they don't have to reinvent the wheel. Companies like Century are providing now flooring, where I grew up on hardwood floor and carpet. And now you have mats and so forth.
They used to be like all red mats. Black. Now there's other colors.
Thank goodness. Oh, yeah.
Yes. So optics-wise, the quality of the equipment definitely has helped improve the perceived value, at least the initial perceived value of the martial arts schools. What are people doing wrong? Well, there's still a lot of martial artists who earn their black belt. They maybe have taught at a school for a certain period of time. They feel like they can do it on their own, so they go off on their own, very under budgeted. And then
it's like a school in a box. It looks like they can pick up and leave in a day.
It makes zero investment in the equipment, makes zero investment in those types of things. And that kind of needs to stop. And that goes back to not having regulations. If we have regulations that, smell, those types of things would be important things that you would want to look for. You would hope that in year 2019 that you would not go into martial arts schools.
As you're saying this, I can already smell it. I can smell that.
That's the feet, the socks, and it's just, and you're going. So, and I'm so glad you both brought this up, because it's terrible. Like, we've been to all these schools across the country, and as soon as we walk in, we get blasted with this aroma, we'll say, and we're going. At this point, I don't care who the instructor is. I don't care what kind of a champ. Everything is out the door because I can't be in there. The smell is bad. The equipment is really bad. It's so overused. It should have been replaced like 10 years ago. That kind of. And it's funny because a lot of this stuff I never cared about. Because when I was taking martial arts, I didn't care if I was kicking a 10-year-old bag. But it's so funny how it changes when you're the person. Like, here's what I want to explain to everybody, is that I've been doing this for almost close to 30 years, and it never occurred to me that would matter. So we're traveling, we're going into these schools, and I'm thinking, so this is what it's like when a new person walks in. This is what it looks like. Because before we walk into these schools, for me, it's really difficult. I have to turn off my experience. I have to turn off my trained perceptions. I have to try to go into my brain and say, you're just a regular person now. You don't know anything. And what does this look like to that person? It's very difficult. So I get a lot of, negative feedback for what I'm doing, but I challenge anybody to say, look, if you've been doing it as long as me, it is not that easy to go and look at a dozen different schools in an area and not be biased because of your training and background. It's very hard to turn that off. But when you do...
But as a parent...
Oh, yeah.
If you're a parent shopping for a martial arts school and you walk into a school that is freshly painted, that has, what's it called, an ozone machine that helps you smell, new equipment, it's professionally dressed team members, then your perceived value is now it's just a matter of making sure that you know, like, and trust them.
Right.
But if you walk into the school in the opposite, you're going to increase the chances of them just turning around and walking.
And the crazy part is there's no excuse for it.
No.
Again, we're kind of talking about the insider behind the scenes right now.
Right.
We've all owned schools, and it doesn't cost that much money to
It really
buy
doesn't,
some
not today.
nice equipment at a wholesale discount. Even if you have to finance it. Like, there's no excuse to have this, like, mom and pop 1980s, 1990s look in 2019.
Yeah.
So I think that's a direct reflection.
Not unless you were deliberately trying to do a throwback school.
That's true. And there are probably some good ones out there.
But that's why I'm glad we're bringing this up now, because we've been to these schools across the country that we're going, you're walking into these schools and you're thinking to yourself, I can't believe that this is what it looks like and smells like, and and it's just so disappointing, because you start to get the idea why less people are participating, because there are less schools that have those beautiful optics than there are the schools that have much less pleasing
stuff
optics.
That's duct taped. It's probably not a good school.
And there's stuff that should be duct taped, but they don't even buy duct tape.
They don't even buy the duct tape, right?
What I find hysterical is you get these school owners, these gym owners, who they have the school that we just described. It's smelly, it's old, there's spider webs in the corner, their instruction is so traditional and hardcore.
It really is, yeah.
And that's like their excuse to not innovate. They'll sit there and go, well, I don't care about that. I don't care because we're traditionalists. We stick to the way that it's always been. Yes. And then you go, well, cool, how many students do you have?
Right.
It's always less than 50.
It's usually.
Okay, so then the question is like, well, then how many lives are you really changing?
Right.
I would rather see a commercialized school that still has high quality instruction, great instructors, and a solid curriculum go to the next level and serve hundreds of people in a community. Yes. Because those are lives being changed.
Right.
That's the metric that we can keep track of.
Yes.
But if they want to sit there and make an excuse, well, I just teach out of my garage, bro, you're not helping anybody.
Yeah,
you're feeding your ego if that's what you do.
Yeah, and that's why.
And look, and half those guys could kick my ass. I'm fine with that. It is what it is.
Both
but that's not what it's about.
Right.
It's just like my philosophy is let's go help as many people as we can.
That's why I decided to sit down with both of you and do this conversation and talk, because these are the hornets' nests and the bears that we got to poke, in order to send that message across and say, look, we're all part of the same team here. Even though we might be having different schools and arts, but we're part of the same team, and that team is comprised of people that want to deliver martial arts to the public in order to make a difference.
Yeah, let's just get better.
That's that. And
there's nothing wrong with being better.
Right. And so my last question, because Duane brought this up, this is for you, Melody, is that, the teaching aspect. And what I would like to ask you about is teaching quality versus learning quality. And something that I've noticed across the country is that if the teaching quality is not where it needs to be, then obviously the learning quality won't be where it needs to be. What can some of these schools start to do or stop doing in order to make sure that the teaching quality is in line with the learning quality?
Well, they can stop just throwing their undertrained staff and instructors out of the mat because they either got their black belt or because they're desperate to have an extra hand to help out on the mat. You wouldn't go to a high quality restaurant and have a brand new cook make your meal for you, right? They need to have a lot of experience, and knowledge is only half of it. So if they say, well, we've taken instructor certification, so I have the knowledge, but that's only half the battle. They need to have experience as well, so they need to have a lot of hands-on training. The problem with a lot of martial arts schools is they don't know how to train their instructors. They don't have they don't have a system for it. For example, for like skill schools, and I'm sure Mass has the same thing. Yeah. We have an online university, so every single instructor, before they even go on the mat, they have to take the 5 online university courses. Once a year, they have to take the live course. on top of all the other training that they do with the weekly and monthly storm team leadership planners. And those types of things play a key factor in the overall success, not just of the school, but of the individual students that they're working with.
Right.
For
Very
sure.
cool.
We've worked with schools for several years, and they keep coming back to all of our live events. We do a couple each year. And they keep coming back every single time to get that refresher, to learn how to manage their classrooms better, to learn how to have better staff members, how to delegate in their own lives as owners. Like, there's a whole learning curve that so many people who automatically just earn a black belt and think that they can own a school.
And that's what I was getting at earlier. That's exactly it.
There's a whole different learning curve that has to be present, and you have to dive into it to become a good educator.
Right. And it's constantly evolving too. Like, our generations 100%. Are evolving. 15 years ago, you would ask what the primary way to get a kid to sit still was, and you would have all the instructors say, we have a timeout zone. For the kid to sit in. You can't do that.
Or like you were talking about at our event, dead cockroach position.
Dead cockroach position, that was me. I used to sit in dead cockroach position, knuckle push-ups. My mother was like, nope, that's how you do it. Today, you can't do that with a kid. It's just it's a very different culture. I'm not saying that it's the parents' fault and the kids are coddled, but the culture and the mindset needs to be different. But there's also better practices these days. Just like medicine has evolved, right? So the medicine from 15 years ago is very different from how you're going to be treated today.
Exactly.
The same thing with teaching practices. They're constantly evolving, so you constantly have to attend these events, the live events, and take these university. We update our online university as well on a regular basis, because we're constantly innovating our teaching practices to meet our culture and come up with better ways, methodologies that are going to make a bigger impact.
Think about like the medical industry.
Okay.
If you're a physician, and especially a surgeon, you are required to take continuing education courses, and you have to get a certain number of hours to maintain your license, right?
Okay, yeah.
So if you're shopping around for a school or a gym, it's also a good question just to kind of dabble and say, hey, what do you guys do to like stay on top of times? What do you do to become better instructors?
Right.
What events do you guys attend?
And I feel like a lot of those people, and I mean, really do mean a lot of them now, they just kind of default on what they were told and taught in their rank. And I'm going, are you comfortable with that? Because a lot of things have changed in the world just in the last decade. Things have changed.
Yeah.
On the education platform, on the political, everything has changed. And they're just sort of defaulting. They're like, oh, I'm a 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th degree, whatever, and that's good. And I'm going, no, that was a personal achievement. That has no bearing on whether or not you can actually teach.
Well, we see a lot of times some of the hardest school owners to work with are the people that have the highest ranks.
Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I'll give you a little insight into this. So the higher the rank or the higher the perceived title, we find that a lot of times their identity is so closely tied in to always being right and always looking like the figurehead of that school or that organization that it goes against their identity to try to learn something new, because then they have to admit maybe for the last several years they weren't doing it to the top of their ability.
Which would then have a negative impact on their... Sure. I got you.
Right? So they almost have to accept the fact that they might be doing things just for tradition's sake, which is not helping them.
No.
So let go of the ego, let go of the identity, and just go, hey, maybe there is a better way.
So what we'll do in this next segment after this is we're just going to dive straight into that ego issue and go from there.